and the Chinese Navy has now been able to train, prepare their Navy, which is vastly bigger than our Navy. Xi Jinping has visited the region at least 5 times since 2013. 22 Latin American and Caribbean countries have signed on to China's Belt Road Initiative. This hemisphere actually can take this opportunity with the leadership of Donald J. Trump in the White House again and really come together, and I mean gel together, as leaders from sovereign nation states that see democracy, the ideals of what freedom can be about. Trump has had to stand physically up against, not just, intellectually.
I want to introduce to you one of the most amazing American patriots in my lifetime. I feel blessed to be living in this day and to know him, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, retired.
Okay. I always speak as though I'll never be invited back. Yeah, no, I know. I'm not going to go through all the dignitaries. President, I will tell you that it's been an honor to now meet you a second time. But for all the dignitaries in here, thank you guys, men and women that are here that love something much bigger than ourselves. One of the things that I would say, and on Sarah, when we first met, I don't know if you remember, she had just come from living with the Sinaloa cartel for like 30 days, I think. You lived with them, and she actually went down and embedded herself inside of the Sinaloa cartel. And that was in 2007, 2008 timeframe. So, a brilliant career, fascinating, tough woman, you and your beautiful husband. And you guys have been special friends of Lori and I for so many years, so thank you very much. Globally, we are facing the competition between 2 ideologies, and that's it. It's the ideology of globalism, or it's the ideology of having a sovereign nation that is free and essentially lives by democratic principles, period. Everybody that's been up here, for the most part, has talked about socialism or communism and all the different things that this hemisphere has really suffered from. And the United States of America, we were like, in fact, we still are. We're sort of on that razor's edge of losing this country. I mean, we were really close. And I remind every audience that I talk to, whether it's 2 or 2,000. Or whatever the number is, that had Donald Trump not won this election, he'd be in prison for the rest of his life right now. Okay? And I know that people like me and maybe some in this room, but maybe not, would have gotten the same fate very quickly after that. And people need to be reminded about that. There's no love on the other side. I tell members of Congress and that when because I'm not a big fan of the word colleague. My colleagues on the other side, my colleagues on the left, they're not your colleagues. And because I love what you said, Sebastian, I would love them to just say, I love America. Okay? The infiltration of the communist ideology and this globalist ideology into our way of life has been ongoing for easily since the early 70s. You can go back to post-World War II and really look at the history of it. One of the things I know we're going to face this, and really what I put together as far as notes was a bunch of notes on China's role in the Southern Hemisphere. Because one of the things that we face is we face a competition for really 3 resources. But 4 if you include just human labor, right? So really that's, human beings are a resource. But the principal resources are food, water, and energy. Food, water, and energy. If you don't have those commodities, then you have to go compete for those commodities, especially if you want to be a nation state, which is defined differently than a state and a nation. So if you want to be a nation state, you have to compete for food, water, and energy. And I can tell you, because I've read everything that the Chinese have put together for the last, actually since 1949. It's been my, my bane of existence. I get up in the morning at 2 or 3 o'clock and I read executive orders and I read history, right? I don't, I'm a terrible golfer. I haven't retired, right? I have been all over the world. I've been on all six of the continents, right? And have really looked at what is the most dangerous thing to the United States of America. And Abraham Lincoln when he was I think 28 years old in 1838, he gave a speech called the Lyceum speech, and he said in that speech that no enemy will ever be able to take a drink from the Ohio or take a step on the Blue Ridge with a Bonaparte for a commander. Never. He said the way that America will find its demise is through our own suicide. It's when he was 28 years old. And he did it at a time, 1838. So he didn't even imagine the Civil War, which is really the second real arc of history for the United States of America. We're in the third arc right now. We are in the third arc. China's desire to expand its sphere of influence through what it calls South-South cooperation. This is very real. It's a development framework focused on aid, investment, and trade. Xi Jinping has visited the region at least 5 times since 2013. So, of course, when he visits, prior to that, post that, are all of the various sectors that represent what the Chinese are trying to do. Okay, if you follow anything that the Chinese are doing globally, One Belt, One Road initiative, it's huge, huge. I've been following the Chinese since I was a J2 at Central Command, where we had 27 nations, all of East Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia. And at that time, the Chinese Navy deployed out of the South China Sea. This was in 2007. They deployed, for the first time in history, they deployed their Navy out of the South China Sea over to the area of the Somali pirates, and they joined a flotilla, but they never really joined. So that's 2007. So since 2007, the Chinese Navy has now been able to train, prepare their Navy, which is vastly bigger than our Navy, okay? That's, how many years is that? 15, 18 years. So in return, a record of 8 presidents from the region visited China in 2023 alone, versus just 1 in 2022. So something is going on. Sebastian said it right about America First. It's bigger. It's much, much bigger. 0 in 2021 and 2020. So 8. 22 Latin American and Caribbean countries have signed on to China's Belt Road Initiative. If you think about China and you think, well, okay, where they are physically, geographically, and they've got that Belt Road Initiative that's been going on for over 20 years now, and it's always been sort of land-based for the most part. I just described their Navy coming into East Africa, up into the to Gulf of into Nigeria. They've built unbelievable physical facilities in North Africa. China currently ranks with South America to the top trading partner. China is the top trading partner with the Southern Hemisphere of the Americas, right? Top. Second largest for Latin America. Okay, and then is the United States. I mean, that's crazy. It's crazy. So when I think about things, this is a strategic issue for this country. Hugely strategic issue for this country, because their ideology is not our ideology. And we can be benevolent and we can be, tough trade partners and tough deal makers. I mean, you're not only a great podcaster, you're a great businessman. And I applaud everything that I have learned from you. China's trade with Latin America in 2000 was $12 billion. In 2022 was $495 billion. That's staggering. China and Latin American bilateral trade is $500+ billion annually and is expected to double by 2035. My guess is that, and I know this because if you listen or you read what Xi says, okay, and I do, every time he gives a speech, I get the interpretation of it and I read it. They are increasingly provocative over the last few years. I mean, increasingly provocative. You know, when everybody always talks about, you know, Sun Tzu and all this stuff about, you know, win a war without firing a shot. I mean, I would say bullshit, okay? They are preparing themselves to be the dominant power on the planet for this century, and their plan, 100-year plan, for those that understand it, was started in 1949 with Mao, goes to 2049. You know, 100-year plan. I've read it, I've studied it. Xi wants it to happen by 2030. Okay, that's why he's kind of made himself. He's ordained himself as the the world leader for the leader for the rest of time here for China. Between 2000 and 2018, China invested $73 billion in Latin America's raw materials sector, food, water, and energy. If there's nothing else that you remember about what I say, remember that those three commodities are what we constantly fight for: food, water, and energy. This country, the United States of America, we have enough coal. We have enough clean coal in the United States of America for the next 500 years to take care of the rest of the world. Just coal. Just coal. Just coal in this country. So when you have 1.4 to 1.6 billion people, you're competing against 1.5 billion in India. When you have these, and you don't have the kind of resources. China does not have the kind of resources that the United States of America has. Okay, and if you read their plans, which I have had the privilege to read in the positions that I've had, their military plans, I mean, it's mind-blowing. Beijing has focused on investing in lithium production in the Lithium Triangle countries of Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. The triad contains roughly half of the world's known lithium, roughly half. The next big chunk of lithium on the planet is in a little old country called Afghanistan, where we allowed China to maintain the lithium mine, the mines that they had there. We allowed them to maintain. In fact, we protected them. We wouldn't even bomb them. Taliban, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, whatever you want to call them, they would hide out there because they knew we wouldn't target them. And as soon as we left, Chinese walked right back into those lithium mines. That's about a third of the world's lithium. The other half is right here in our, just down the street here, right? The Southern Hemisphere. Marxist left-leaning communists that we've had in our country for a long, long time. It ebbs and flows. Trump was persecuted. I mean, I know what persecution is. Trump was persecuted for 4 years. And imagine if he had the opportunity to not have that. If they loved our country and they just wanted him to use whatever policies and the Republican way or the conservative way of running a government or a country. I mean, think about what we could have been able, what we would have been able to do. I mean, to me, it's unimaginable. Chinese state-owned firms are heavily involved in the energy development. As of late 2022, Power China company had over 50 ongoing projects across 15 Latin American countries. In 2023, China accounted for 80% of fishing in Argentina, Ecuador, and Peruvian waters. 70% of U.S. trade goes through the Panama Canal. Both coasts, right? Panama Canal. If you just take some ruler, a basic ruler, and you go from Dalian, China, to the opening of the Mediterranean, right, versus going up across the Arctic or coming around the Horn, right? I mean, you're talking about 3-4 times the length of time to take a transit ship. In these large ships that can move at a good clip, instead of going through that Panama Canal. Both locks, the key locks Key locks right now they're run by Chinese companies. 70%. So that's trade. Never mind the military importance of that canal. I mean, it's critical. It's critical. It's critical. Suez Canal, Panama Canal, and then two straits, certainly the Straits of Malacca, but there's two critical straits down in the Indonesia area. Those are the most important waterways on the planet. And for the United States of America, it's the Panama Canal. And Trump is right to say, you know, Greenland, Gulf of America, Panama. It's not about picking on Panama. And Molina, who's down there now, he actually is a big pro-America guy. You know, the last couple were communists. Argentina. I don't know if they stayed here, but Argentina was 100 years under communism. 100 years. And Milei came in. 100 years. I talked to Tucker after he went down there, and I'll get off the stage here, when he went down there to do the interview a while back, you know, and they were out to have like a steak dinner, and like they had to carry around like these giant wads of money because the money was worthless. Our money could become that way, and whatever happens with our money, you know, digital currency. I could spend a day talking about digital currency and the rise of digital currency. The BRICS nations, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and there's 27 others that represent 85% of the world's population. Okay? So China, food, water, and energy. And I believe what Donald Trump will do, and I want to see him take a meat cleaver out, frankly, at 12:01. That, you know, and right there with him. And I think he will, you know, in a very smart way, as he's demonstrated. But we cannot rely, and this is why this room, Joe, is so important. And the type of people that are here, leaders, these are leaders. We cannot rely on one man, okay? And we all are going to have a responsibility to serve, whether it's business or podcasts or whether it's, you know, whatever you end. It's whatever. It's not just in government. Not just in government. It's serving your community. It's serving your families. It's serving your churches. It's serving the country, right? And it's serving each other. I do believe why this is such an important forum. And there's great people in here, and you know, and I know, you know, a good half the room, because if we don't figure out in this hemisphere right here, because I will tell you the competing ideologies that we are up against. I'm watching Europe unravel. I'm watching the Middle East unravel again. Africa, you know, all kinds of problems. There's some, you know, positive spots out there in some places, but fewer and fewer. This hemisphere actually can take this opportunity with the leadership of Donald J. Trump in the White House again, and really come together, and I mean gel together. You know, as leaders from sovereign nation states that see democracy, the ideals of what freedom can be about. You know, one of the gentlemen that was up here earlier was talking about liberty, right? I mean, that's what this is about. That's the competition. And if we don't understand it, and I will tell you, the majority of Americans in this country didn't understand it 4 years ago. They're starting to understand it now because of everything that Trump has had to stand physically up against, not just, you know, intellectually. And don't think that our enemies, like we say on the battlefield, our enemies always have a vote. The enemy has a vote. And when the enemy has a vote, that means that they're calculating, they're planning, they're strategizing, they're thinking, and they're trying to understand the landscape of how they will respond to all of this. It's not just in business that stuff like that happens. It's also in warfare. And this is the highest form of war. You are absolutely right. And we can clearly dominate this. I mean, if there's anything, You know, I joke that the presidency was a podcast presidency because Trump finally figured out that the old school way wasn't going to work. You know, so he went to the podcasters. That's what this was. This was a podcast presidency. I'm telling you, you know, there's a lot of little parts of the equation that got him elected, but that's one of them. Because he finally realized that there's a grassroots movement globally. I mean, globally, and you know this, globally, because you can turn these things on and you go, wow. And what we're finding is there's so many people around the world that, like that cab driver, right, coming from Afghanistan, that are taking a big, deep breath, and now they want to see execution. They want to see us execute America, you know. And it's not just the Southern Hemisphere, it's the entire America, okay? The three big land masses that make this thing up. They want to see Trump lead it, but they want to see us succeed. The world. So, you know, thanks very much. And Sergio, thanks for dragging me. And I appreciate Joseph for putting this on. God bless you all.